Alright, good afternoon, YouTube. So, I am going to be reviewing a program that I'm kind of hesitant to do. Mainly because it's a program that I actually did. It's a program that has been made by people I respect and have liked their content for quite a long time. However, that's not going to stop me from being any more objective than what needs to be done, because if it's not a good program, it doesn't matter if I like the person or not. It's just not a good program. And that kind of begs the question of, what do I consider a good program? So the reason why I talk about power building on this channel is because if I just gave general fitness advice, if I just gave general guidelines and things of that nature, what ends up happening is that you kind of get to this point where there's some validity to being very relativistic. I am very much opposed to any type of, well, everything's just relative and nothing has meaning except the meaning we give it and things of that nature. And this morally relativistic thinking that kind of bleeds over into other things. I'm very much against that. However, with that being said, you can't really just make these hard rules without making constraints and without making standards and using common definitions in the first place. So that's why I always present things in a context of power building. So power building is something that, like, it can mean there's like the levels of its definition will vary. So obviously, if you look up a word on any type of definition, you might come upon different things. So power building, as described here, it's that combines principles from powerlifting and bodybuilding to achieve significant gains in both strength and muscular hypertrophy. In other words, you'll be strong and look strong. So that's a very valid way of looking at power building. Other ways that I've seen power building be used and applied is that you are using bodybuilding, you're using the powerlifting movement, squat, bench, and deadlift, to be the basis of your bodybuilding progression. So you are using those higher rep ranges, but you're getting stronger, rather than prioritizing something like a pump or a burn or partials or artificial ways to increase the intensiveness of a workout. You are pushing the intensity of each workout, trying to get your one rep, not really a one rep max. So I'm sorry, but trying to get your strength, and strength being a loose term. So let's say a 5 rep max, a 6 rep max, 8 rep max, 10, 12, 15, or 20 rep max in a powerlifting movement, or really just a really good barbell exercise. It's not even a movement that belongs exclusively to powerlifters, but it's part of just the language. But anyway, you are using those movements to drive your hypertrophy. You're getting stronger in those movements to drive your hypertrophy. That is another way to describe power building. Now, as a power builder, and this is something that I talk about, is while the goal is getting stronger, strength is not limited to just 1 rep max strength. And it can be if you are a competitive power lifter, but you still want to have bodybuilder style elements into your training. Then, by nature, you are a power builder, but when you think about strength, you're thinking about it in a 1 rep max standpoint, whereas a more bodybuilding oriented lifter, a non-competitive lifter, will definitely think about it more so in the sense of maybe a 2, 3, like 5, 8, or just anywhere within a reasonable rep range, and getting stronger at the high end of that rep range. And that's power building. Now, when I think of a bad power building program, it's really just when the program is literally just the powerlifting exercises done with as much volume and as much accessory movements as you can throw, as many as you can fit in there, trying to just jam everything in it. And I think that's a huge disservice and disrespect to the principles of both disciplines. There is overlap. We're just lifting weights. We're just going to the gym and lifting weights. It's not too serious, right? However, if you're trying to really optimize and maximize the gains that you're trying to receive, there are nuances that you want to be aware of, right? So if you're training specifically for strength, you will find the most amount of differences at the extremes. So if you're training specifically for strength or specifically for size and specializing in either one of those variables, you will train very differently from one another. Now, as a power builder, the way I like to think of it as a possibility, a profit possibility frontier, where it's a kind of like a curve where if you spend more resources of your recovery into one aspect, you take less from another. So you're measuring the gains you could receive in one variable by the loss that you are taking in the other. So when you're trying to maximize the two, you're trying to get that number of size or strength that you can get given the constraint of how much size or strength you want to get as well. So with that being said, there's things like exercise selection that has to be very in my opinion, needs to be considered more heavily. There's volume and how you manipulate volume that needs to be thinking of more carefully. And of course, intensity. The thing is with these things, with these variables, is that the more intensity you do, the less volume you can probably handle. The more frequently you train, the more your volume is high. And also the more frequently you train, the less intensity you can do. So the way these things relate is very important into the context of how you approach power building. And with that being said, let's get into the actual review. So the review that I'm going to be doing is the Kizen 4-week power building spreadsheet. So Kizen was made by Bar Kwan, Omar Isuf, and Silent Mike. 3 people I highly respect. 3 very intelligent people, 3 very skilled people in the realm of powerlifting, and just strength sport in general. These are cream of the top barbell enthusiasts, and they have proven themselves very well into their as far as their strength feats go, as far as their intelligence goes, as far as exercise science goes, and coaching and all that, right? These are very intelligent people, and we're going to be reviewing that program. And like I said, I'm a fan of these people. I have a couple shirts from Rascal Apparel. I have bought Kaizen program in the past. Like I said, one of the first programs I ever followed growing up when I first started lifting weights at 16 years old was from Bart Kwan. So I say this as a disclaimer because I'm not going to fanboy over this program. I'm not going to excuse it because it's just like, well, obviously they're very successful, so it must be right and it must work, right? And the answer to that is no. If it doesn't really capture what I think is best for a power builder, then I'm not going to say it does. But anyway, let's go into it. So first off, program overview. Hot off the wheels of the immensely popular Kaizen 6-week bench press peaking program spreadsheet, Silent Mike, Bar Kwan, Omar Isuf have teamed up yet again for 4 weeks of their 16-week power building program for free. So I totally forgot my Kaizen Academy because I think that's their website and their web client that they had to access the program. I totally forgot my login, and I think it's associated with an email I don't use anymore, so I can't even get into it if I tried. But anyway, I bought a power building program from them and also a building muscle and burn fat at the same time kind of program. So let's see. The Kaizen power building program includes 6 times per week training sessions. I'm already hesitant with that. Near big 3 variations, unlike GZCL programming. So GZCL is something I need to actually do a lot more research on because I'm so confused as far as how they do it. I think it's about tiers and things of that nature, and I like that approach. From what I do understand, I do like some ideas in it, but I'm not as clear on it as I would like to be. While the lack of specificity might not be good program for meet prep, it's a good force for lifters looking to build out their work capacity while still training the major lifts. And that's a key thing about power building. If you are just a straight up powerlifter, and you compete, then obviously you're going to train differently. Whereas if you're someone who just wants to look good, you're going to train differently as well. But if you do care about size and strength, you want to maximize the overlap between the two, but still respect the differences between them. Well, that's about it. So let's get into the program, mate. Okay, does it. Day 1, superset. Already like that. Dumbbell shoulder press and wide grip pull down. 2 sets of 12. 2 sets of 12. Huh. It's been a while since I looked at this program, but this seems about right. So so it's a power building program, but on the first day you're not doing any of the main lifts. So when I say main lifts, right, the main lifts for a power builder, in my opinion, are actually very different from, like, let's say a main lift of a power lifter. A power lifter, obviously, what do they compete in? Bench, squat, deadlift. A power builder, I think there's, maybe we can call it like the big three and the three little brothers, or I don't know, like just something cute like that, right? Like the big three, little three, then, or like big three or bigger three if you want to be like really into marketing and be like, nah, this is the most important thing, right? So that being said, bench, squat, and deadlift, big three. The next three movements that I think are 100% necessary as a power builder: chin-ups, barbell row, barbell overhead press. Those are movements that accomplish very similar things to the big three in that they activate a significant amount of muscle and can be overloaded more than other movements. Now, there are other movements that you can add to this. So, for example, the weighted dip, or just the body weight dip on parallel bars, like, or rings. Those are very valid options too. They work a lot of muscles and they have a high potential to be overloaded. So it's already an issue that a movement like that is not included. Now you could say that, oh, they get added in later weeks, but you're just seeing the first 4 weeks. In the later weeks, it's going to get in there. In what circumstance would that actually make sense? In what circumstance would it actually make sense to be like, whoa, 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 whoa there, kid. Like, you got to slow down there. You can't be lifting no barbell bench presses or overhead presses or squats. Like, you got to wait at least 4 weeks before you're to be old enough, kitty. So that doesn't really make sense. Like, that's not how anyone would really ever program for themselves, especially if they were to call it a strength and aesthetics program. After that, it's just cable row, cable tricep pushdown, dumbbell lateral raise, in a giant set or superset, followed by dumbbell French press and hammer curl. And it's all the same rep range. Everything is just all the same rep range. I already, like, the main issue that I have there is just the fact that different movements lend themselves to different rep ranges. Some movements can be performed in every rep range. So, for example, the best example I can think of is that as far as the deadlift goes, so just the straight up conventional deadlift, I like to train that movement in the 1 to 6 rep range. That is the most, 6 reps is the most I'm going to go on a conventional deadlift. Because after that, I'm using a weight that's too light. After that, I'm really just doing it for, like, let's say, conditioning. And I don't think training it above 6 reps is carrying over nearly as much to my deadlift 1 rep max. But for the bench press, my striking range is a lot wider. I will do rep ranges from 1 to 20. Obviously, not exactly in that way. So I'll do things like 1 to 3 reps, 2 to 5 reps, 4 to 8 reps, 6 to 10, 8 to 12, 10 to 15 or more. I will go through an entire range, like that big ass range of reps for that movement. But not every movement is like that. I wouldn't do and then also it's just like, as another example, I simply cannot do high rep pull-ups because I'm not able to do them. The most I'm able to do is like 8 to 10. So by default, just by the nature of my level of strength, I'm only training in lower rep ranges when it comes to something like a bodyweight pull-up. So the fact that all of this is just 2 sets of 12 reps, to me it just seems like it's an arm day, and you're starting the week on an arm day. Like, this is something that I would consider like just a bodybuilding arm day, and that's a big thing. That's a big issue I have with a lot of bodybuilding power building programs. It's just the fact that you basically are just gonna do a really shitty powerlifting workout and then a really shitty bodybuilding workout. Next, squat, bench, stiff-legged deadlift. And once again, first of all, this thing's blank, so interesting. And second of all, the percentages are just so low that what are you actually achieving here besides maybe exercise, fat loss, conditioning? And while that's not really a bad thing, is that the same as strength and aesthetics? I wouldn't say so. I wouldn't think that this is like, depending on what your 1 rep max is, like, you could argue that this is good for strength and aesthetics. And perhaps this one here is depending on your maxes again as well. But on the deadlift, like I said, like even for my novice trainees, right? For my novice trainees, I actually like the most I'll do is 6 to 8, 10 being the most upper limit. Like that's kind of where I'm just like after 10 reps, I'm just like you're doing CrossFit, you're you're just doing conditioning. Like I really like after at like 10 being the hard limit, but generally speaking, as for novices, the striking range, in my opinion, for building their deadlift is 4 to 8. 4 to 8 reps on their deadlift is really, really good. Most of my novice for the first 3 years of their training, that's kind of where most of their reps will fall. Like I'll have them do sets of 5, sets of 6, sets of 8, and anywhere in between. And also like if I have them push the intensity on it, generally speaking, if they fail a set with outside of that range, then I'm going to ask that they drop the weight a bit and keep working in that range of 4 to 8. And even though it's a variation, that's what I can see as the justification for why it's all 3 sets of 10. But like I said, you can definitely do higher reps with compound movements and get really good strength and aesthetic gains. But it's 3 movements that are so hyper different that you have to warm up for the squat, warm up for the bench, and then warm up for the deadlift. Each time, like that's kind of like a huge time sink as far as like what you're doing and what you're getting out of the day. For how long you're going to be in the gym, the amount of work that you're actually doing for each movement, for each body part, is actually not that much, which is an issue that I have. Next, superset, close grip, pull down, skull crusher. It's another arm day. It's starting off with more bodybuilding style movements, and then chest supported row. Then same thing, runs the same issues of day 1. Day 4, a little bit better, given that it's basically an upper body day, heavy upper body day with the squat added onto it. So you could call it a push day, which is not bad. But so this is actually, like, in my opinion, the best day that they have here. One thing I would add though is like some type of pull variation. So even if it's like a face pull or like maybe a seated cable row, just so that way you're still keeping it fairly specific, still able to train these in higher intensities and lower rep ranges, but you're still getting a good like balanced carryover as far as like power building goes. And it's pretty easy to kind of program in there, like doing some type of pull with your any type of push. I'm a huge advocate for that. Even if the science doesn't really back it, I don't think you're really losing anything from it either. So even if it's like, even if the like as time goes on, it becomes proven that there is no added benefit to doing it, or it, let's see, because I don't know, it's kind of difficult to like give an example, because it's I want to not misrepresent arguments for and against it. But generally speaking, just do a pull in your pushes, man. Like, you're not losing anything from it. Next day, barbell rows, tricep push down. That's okay. Like, I like that superset, but for it to be like the first thing you do that day for the main work, I kind of take issue with that. Chin up, decline tricep extension, same thing. Like, this is a great superset. This is something that you can do if you just kind of rearrange some movements around, and like, let's say you do like a bench press focused kind of thing, but then all your accessories are this. That's a great workout right there. Like, I would much rather see that. Day 6, squat, pause squat, bench, deadlifts, hamstring curls. So this is like same thing. Like, you're basically doing a power lifter workout kind of deal, but it's kind of all over the place. You have to keep warming up, and each time you do a different thing, a different movement of the core lifts, you're taxed. You're entering every single movement of the core lifts more taxed than you did at the start of the workout. And if you're trying to maximize the amount of strength you're getting from something, you want to be as fresh as you possibly can be, because if you're fresh, you're able to push harder, work harder, lift more weight, and that over time will lead to more strength gains, in my opinion. That's just what I found, but who knows? I'm not the strongest guy, so we have to leave room for error and like give the devil his due, right? But generally speaking, like I mentioned earlier, I don't really like the idea of power building on 6 days a week. Now, this might be contradictory, because in my previous video where I talked about my week, I said that I trained 6 days a week, but it's important to take this key distinction. 4 of those days are weight training sessions, so barbell, free weight, and like just main heavy lifting sessions, whereas the other 2 day it's an arm day, a conditioning day, like so cardio, things of that nature, or just body weight GPP work. None of that, and the way I do it, none of it ever impedes my ability to perform the next day. If anything, for one, the workouts are so much shorter, I get done with them so much faster. They're at most, or at minimum, half the length of my usual workout. So they are by no means a huge dent in my recovery, and they also don't really use any of the movement patterns that are present in this. So it's not a really big recovery cost to begin with. But for the other 4 days, those are my mandatory workout sessions. I will never miss one of those. I will never sacrifice one of those workout sessions and just be like, oh, I'm just going to do an arm day. I'm just going to do a conditioning day. No, if I have to do, if I'm going to train, well, because I've been working out like for so long, the only time I ever took a prolonged break from working out was during the time when gyms were closed. Before that, I was going every single week, and every single week, regardless of what was going on, at least those 4 workouts, I always did. So, and they always maintained compound movements, core lifts, and like minor accessories that pushed for more volume, pushed for more size gains. And my big issue with 6-day powerlifting programs is that it really is just a mix of really bad bodybuilding days followed by really bad powerlifting days. The reason why I personally prefer the upper lower template as being, in my opinion, the most optimal way to manage volume, frequency, and intensity as a power builder, keyword there, as a power builder. When I see power building programs that deviate from that, I'm just like, I usually say it can be done, but does it take into consideration the same caveats and cons that I usually think of? And generally speaking, no. So for example, on a 6-day power building split that I personally would make, I would straight up tell the person like, hey, you're probably just going to make gains on 2 lifts. Like, if you want to get the most amount of gains, strength gains out of a 6-day program where you're not resting nearly enough, but you're still going to be pushing really, really heavy on, but you still want to push pretty heavy during this 6-day workout, but you're only recovering for 1 day a week, the con or the detriment of that training system is that unless you can just maximize recovery perfectly, you're going to make the best amount of progress on just 2 lifts. That's what I've experienced. That's what I've seen for other people who I tried to make programs for that were 6-day splits. They would only progress on 2 lifts. They would stagnate by the nature of the program on at least one of the core lifts, barbell squat or bench press, squat, or deadlift. So for one of my clients, he wanted to train 6 days a week, so I tried to make him the best 6-day a week power building program that I could possibly manage. And in doing that, that's kind of part of where I gained some knowledge, but also I would make him that program, then I would also make a variation of that for myself, so that way we'd be running it concurrently, so that way I could kind of see the pitfalls of modifications that I would make for him down the line, and kind of like not just have a theoretical mindset through it, but also like some amount of experiential evidence for the claims I'm going to be making down the line for him. So, or at that time, because that was like a couple years ago now, but anyway, yeah, like in a 6-day power building program, usually when people want to train 6 days and still be a power builder, I usually tell them, what's the 2 most important lifts out of the big 3? Because you're gonna improve the most on one, because that's usually the one that I start the week on, day 1, so that way there's a rest day beforehand, and then everything else underneath, like before it, like or after it, like you're gonna try to avoid taxing out what was used, so that way it gets some amount of recovery even though you're working out pretty much every single day. And then somewhere in that is the other 2 movements, where one will progress fairly reliably but not as much as it could, and then one that's going to progress if they're a novice, but if they're, let's say, more intermediate or their recovery is not as on point, then it's probably going to be the first to stagnate. And that could just be, a fault of my programming at the time, and also my limitations as a coach or trainer. However, generally speaking, like when running to that problem, when I think about it, I just think that just kind of comes with the territory of trying to power build on a 6-day split. with clients who I have made 6-day programs with, that was just always the case, even if I tried my best to kind of work around it. But anyway, let's go into week 2, and I'm seeing more of the same. There's no where's the progression in this? Like, let's see, RPE 8. So on the first week you were doing RPE 8. So it's kind of like saying, as long as you're hitting RPE 8, you're fine. And RPE 8 can mean that, oh, you're feeling a bit weaker this day, so this felt like a RPE 8, and then the next week you're feeling a lot stronger, so you're going to do another RPE 8. And RPE 8 now means 2 very different things, and that's a key feature of auto-regulation. That's actually kind of the point. But I think it's a misapplication of it, simply because if that becomes the program, then you're kind of training by feel, kind of training by mood, kind of training by instinct, and that's kind of counterintuitive to the necessity of a program. The purpose of a program is to push progression. So while I think there should be a level of auto-regulation in every program, I think this is not the best way to go about it, because how would you progress this? There's no change in reps. You're doing the same RPEs, essentially the same exercises, and then the only thing that goes up is on the days where you do more powerlifting style training. And why would you split up the deadlift and the stiff leg deadlift? Because what's going to happen is you warmed up to do this movement, you're still warm, and then you want to go into this one. The thought process is probably that you want to give some time for it to recover. But in my mind, giving it time to recover is time for it to get stale. Like, obviously that's an exaggeration, but if I had to kind of sandwich my workout between 2 deadlift variations, I would definitely kind of roll my eyes and just want to go home at that point. And even if I push through it, I would definitely feel like I should have just done this on the first one. And same issues as the first week. So as much as I like what Kizen means, as much as I like the people behind it, as much as I am confident in their ability to program, as much as I am confident that they mean well and are capable of better, this is not a good program in my opinion. And that is just my opinion. For what I would want to get out of power building, for what I would recommend, this is very, very far from it. And for that reason, it's not a program that I personally would recommend. But let's go over... I will need to make more videos talking about my training philosophy, but if I were to kind of, let's say, continue on with grading for last week, I would kind of put I want to give it a C-, but then I realize that I'm doing that to be biased, because then if I give this one a C- and I give the last one a C, the quality between the two is actually fairly different. Both of them weren't that good, but still, it's still fairly different. So I would have to call this a D+ maybe, for power building. And this is a subjective rating, honestly, this doesn't really mean much. The rating doesn't really mean much, and it's a rating based on what I think is best for power building. And obviously they have a different vision, so that kind of adds to the discrepancy between the quality of the program itself and also my rating of it. So that's something worth taking into consideration. With that being said, I still wouldn't really think that this is the best way to maximize strength and aesthetics. I don't think this is the best way to kind of train for power building. But despite that, there's still, if this is what you can do consistently, if you can recover from this, if you can meet those 2 things, consistency and recoverability of a program, you're fine. Honestly, at that point, it's totally okay. But the thing is, those 2 things guarantee you results, but they don't guarantee you the best results. If you do something consistently and if you can recover from it, you're for sure going to get results. But the question is it the most results that you could possibly get for the amount of time you're investing into it? And I would just have to say no. But anyway, that's the video. I hope you like it. I hope you found it useful. I'm Karelsa King, StanStrength.com, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.